So, you want to argue with strangers. So, you want to become a total loser. So, you want to watch Star Wars. Whether you clicked on this video of your own volition, or it was sent to you by a friend, you're all here for the same reason. You want to learn what this whole Star Wars thing is all about. Chances are, you've known someone in your life that is just as obsessed with the franchise as I am. They've seen all of the movies, all of the TV shows, played video games, and even read, books. All of this to say, it can seem pretty intimidating to try and get into Star Wars. As a franchise, it has one of the most outspoken and passionate, we'll say, fan bases out there, and I could not be happier that you have decided to give this little franchise a shot. So, in this video, I'm going to walk through how to start watching Star Wars movies. Just the movies for today. So, let's talk about Star Wars. Star Wars is a franchise that was created by George Lucas with the 1977 movie, Star Wars. It was later renamed to Star Wars Episode 4, but I'll get to that later. It's a mix of science fiction and fantasy, leaning heavily on the fantasy side of things. That includes all manner of different aliens, strange retro-futuristic technology, and random space wizards who can wield laser swords and do space magic. Star Wars was originally meant to be a fairly light-hearted and entertaining film, and that's what you're getting into. While Star Wars is sci-fi fantasy, it has a lot of influencing inspirations, but just listing the big ones, westerns and samurai movies, Buck Rogers in the 25th century, and even the 1965 novel Dune. Yes, Dune is really that old. When George Lucas made the movie, he specifically stated that he designed the narrative around the hero's journey story structure, originally proposed by Joseph Campbell. If you don't know what the hero's journey is, I recommend checking it out if you want to go into a creative field. But it is essentially a narrative structure that has been unconsciously used for human storytelling since humans have been telling stories. This was a conscious choice on Lucas's behalf, and the hero's journey defines a lot of Star Wars stories, from the original movies in the 70s and 80s to the most recent Star Wars media. Speaking of those movies in the 70s and 80s, the beginning, a wonderful place to start. You may have heard this name before, but the original trilogy simply refers to the first 3 Star Wars movies that were ever released. These movies are Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, Revenge, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Now, you may be thinking, is Thomas a dumbass? The first 3 movies can't be 4, 5, and 6. It's 1, 2, and 3. Like I said earlier, the original 1977 Star Wars movie was just called Star Wars. After the movie was released, George Lucas renamed it because he wanted to make a prequel trilogy that took place before these movies in the Star Wars timeline. So, these first 3 movies were renamed to Episodes 4, 5, and 6. You're gonna notice that Star Wars movies are often organized into trilogies, and that's just a tradition at this point. If you're gonna watch a Star Wars movie, these are the movies you should watch first. They are the reason for the franchise existing, and, if you ask me, are the best movies in the franchise. Though I am sure there will be some Star Wars fans to disagree with me in the comments. But honestly, there isn't much for me to say about these. They're just fun movies with a fantastic story, soundtrack, and when the movies were released, they helped pioneer groundbreaking visual effects. Although some were digitally enhanced later on, so they may look nicer than they did when they first came out. The first Star Wars movie also helped pioneer the concept of the blockbuster, and is marked as a significant point in film history. All that to say, if you're gonna start watching Star Wars, start with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. I've been dreading this. This is probably the section of the video that will upset people the most. Nonetheless, it's time to talk about the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy. This trilogy refers to the 3 movies that take place before the original Star Wars trilogy in the timeline, as you might expect the name prequel to indicate. Specifically, the Prequel Trilogy refers to Star Wars Episodes 1, The Phantom Menace, 2, Attack of the Clones, and 3, Revenge of the Sith. If you have heard of this trilogy, you have likely heard that it is a misunderstood masterpiece, that it is the cornerstone of all things Star Wars. And while people are welcome to enjoy these movies, this perception is incorrect. To any objective observer, the Star Wars prequels are not good movies. They usually feel long, have dialogue that could induce a coma.
Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations?
And have questionable acting choices from award-winning actors.
A Sith Lord?
If we wanted to get into the why the prequels are so rough around the edges, there are a lot of people with opinions on this, and many of them have already posted YouTube videos about it. However, if you were to ask me, this trilogy is a manifestation of people not being able to tell George Lucas no. You see, by this point in time, Lucas still had direct control over the Star Wars franchise, meaning that he wrote the scripts, decided on final art direction, and directed. Well, directed most of it. And while I believe his sense for art direction is fantastic, I don't think he is best suited as a director or screenwriter. That is not to say that there are no redeeming qualities in the prequels. For example, the soundtrack is fantastic. If you liked the John Williams soundtrack from the original trilogy, then you will love the prequel soundtrack. Also, the visuals and art design are immaculate. I may not love the prequel trilogy a lot, but I love the aesthetics, especially Episode 3. Unfortunately, these wonderful effects and music are mired by the poor narrative quality of the prequels, and even more unfortunately, they are integral to the lore and overall implications of Star Wars media to come. But on the bright side, you may finally understand the origins of some prolific memes.
Hello there.
General Kenobi!
And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
Now, don't let me bum you out entirely. If you end up enjoying these movies, then great. I'm glad you found an element of Star Wars to enjoy. I just wanted to give any new Star Wars fans a warning so that they could temper their expectations. Besides, if you've already begun your Star Wars journey, you too must suffer, as I have suffered. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So once you've watched the original trilogy, buckle up and watch Star Wars Episodes 1, 2, and 3, and I hereby banish Episodes 1, 2, and 3 to the corner of failed potential. The year is 2012. 9 years after the last prequel movie, George Lucas has officially sold the rights to the Star Wars franchise to the Walt Disney Company. After acquiring these rights, Disney and new Lucasfilm chairman Kathleen Kennedy immediately begin working on a new Star Wars Sequel Trilogy. As you may have picked up by now, the Sequel Trilogy refers to movies that take place after the original trilogy. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, 8, The Last Jedi, and 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Chances are, you know of these movies. And, after watching the prequels, you may need a palate cleanser. Fortunately for you, the first of these movies is exactly that. As for the overall quality of these movies, they average out to being okay. While many Star Wars fans have gone back and hated these movies after or during their release, especially prequels fans, they are probably best described as mid. The first of these movies, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is actually quite a fun movie. Many fans pointed out its similarities to Episode 4, however, as time has gone by, it's not bothered me as much. It probably helps to understand that Episode 7 is made as a reaction to the prequels. It wants to be fun, light, and bring the franchise back to its roots, so I understand why there are similarities. As for Episode 8, The Last Jedi, this is probably the one you've heard the most about. This movie had a controversial reception from the fans. However, it truly is impossible to know how many of them were fans and how many were Russian bots. I'm not kidding. Overall, I think this movie is okay. It's not perfect, but it didn't entirely suck. The last movie in this trilogy, and in the mainline Star Wars films, is Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I have a lot of negative opinions about this one. However, I will simply say that this movie is the manifestation of a larger problem with the Star Wars sequel trilogy. There was no plan. I'm not kidding. Disney seriously had no plan for a cohesive narrative spanning the sequel trilogy. There was no plan to tell a connected story. The directors weren't communicating with each other, and that is evident even just watching The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi back to back. Now, I may not like the prequels, but even they had a connected narrative, though the poor writing may not indicate that at times. So, if ever you are watching the sequel trilogy and certain plot elements do not pan out how you thought they might, I'm afraid you're going to have to get used to that feeling. Other than that, the sequels aren't that bad. They are generally more enjoyable to watch than the prequels, but they aren't exactly masterpieces of cinema. They're more disappointing. So, once you watch the prequels, go ahead and watch Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And it's into the corner of failed potential with these three. Now that I've covered the mainline Star Wars movies, and assuming you've made it this far, let's briefly cover what are known as the Standalone Movies. These movies are meant to be watched as a self-contained narrative, and don't necessarily connect to the mainline movies. As of now, there are only 2 standalone movies: Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Solo, a Star Wars story. Technically, there is a third, the animated Star Wars The Clone Wars movie. However, I'm not counting it here because it relates more to the animated TV show, and also, it's not good. I say that as a Clone Wars fan. Anyway, let's start with Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This movie is set between Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and Episode 4, A New Hope. Actually, it ends up being set, right before Episode 4. Right before. Essentially, the movie ends, and then Episode 4 starts. They are literally right next to each other in the timeline. And if you haven't watched Episode 4 yet, go do it now, because I'm going to spoil it. To be fair, you've had 48 years at this point. Rogue One follows a cast of mostly new characters, and covers how the Death Star plans from Episode 4 come into the hands of the Rebels. And it also explains how such a gigantic battle station such as the Death Star could get blown up by one proton torpedo from a lucky farm boy. Believe it or not, this was a point of contention in the fan base for a long time.
Well, I mean, there's this little hole. It was kind of an aesthetic choice by the architect, and if you shoot a laser into this hole, the station blows up. Overall, this movie is solid, and Act 3 is so cool. It is very entertaining in Act 3. However, in my opinion, the pacing can drag a little in Act 2, but as a whole, it is a good movie. And it also has some phenomenal actors, such as Alan Tudyk, Ben Mendelsohn, Felicity Jones, and so many more. Frankly, you only really need to watch the original trilogy to watch this movie, but I'd recommend going through the mainline movies all the same. With that said, let's move on to Solo, a Star Wars story. Solo is also set between Episodes 3 and 4, however, it takes place about 10 years before Episode 4. As you might have guessed from the title, this movie follows a young Han Solo, played by Alden Ehrenreich. Now, I have opinions about this movie, mostly about how I didn't think it needed to exist. I think it is more fun and more interesting if we know less about Han Solo, but overall, it's a pretty fun movie. The cast is very impressive, including Woody Harrelson, Daenerys Targaryen, Emilia Clarke, Donald Glover playing a young Lando Calrissian, and Paul Bettany. Their performances are also very solid. One of the major criticisms about this movie is one that I personally hold, which is that it is a checklist of things that we already know about Han Solo. While there are some new plot elements in this movie, chances are, if you were paying attention to the Han Solo lore in the original trilogy, this movie does not bring many new things to the table. But that may be because its production was apparently a mess. The original writers and directors of Solo, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, creators of the first Lego movie, apparently made the original cut so bad that Disney fired them and hired Ron Howard to come in and fix their mistakes. And honestly, I'm kind of upset that they did not let Ron Howard make his own Star Wars movie. because he was able to make a decent narrative out of the pieces that he had. I have my own opinions about this movie, but overall, it's okay. It is a solid, entertaining movie, but it is not that adventurous, narratively speaking. Like I said with Rogue One, I'd recommend watching the mainline Star Wars movies first, but if you don't want to, the original trilogy will suffice just fine. Okay, so this part's unscripted right here. I did not script this. I literally just have in there unscripted rant, so here we go. So there is one part of Solo that really bothers me. It's at the beginning of the movie when the Imperial officer ends up being the one that gives Han Solo the Solo part of his name. That has always, even when I watched it, it bothered me. What I'm proposing is this. You have the officer there, and that officer is like, well, I have to fill in this box. The officer does not give him his name. He does not give him his name. The officer says, well, I need to fill in this box. So Han stops and thinks for a second, maybe looks down, and then looks back as Kira is being dragged away and then maybe dragged out of sight. And the moment she gets dragged out of sight, he then looks back at the officer and says, Solo. Like, and that's his choice, that's his name. That's one of the changes I would make with this movie, but that's like a big one, is that one bothered me a lot. Anyway, the rant over. I'm gonna wrap up the video now, but I just needed to get that out. Well, that covers all of the Star Wars movies. If you've made it this far, congratulations! You are now one of us. If you'd like to continue your Star Wars journey, I have good news for you. Star Wars has a lot of different media in all sorts of forms. There are TV shows, both animated and live action, video games and books, but they all vary greatly in quality. And while I have my recommendations, you can generally consume this media in any order. For now though, I'll save my TV show and video game recommendations for another video, since this one is long enough already, and I want to give proper time to talk about each of them. I'm currently working on a Clone Wars video that should be coming out soon, well, as soon as my upload schedule is. And like I've said before, all of my opinions are just my opinions. If you end up disagreeing, let me know in the comments. And you know what to do for the general YouTube call to action at this point. I don't need to say it. But for now, enjoy your Star Wars journey, and may the Force be with you, always. You want to know... I'm going to talk about... Okay, maybe I can try that again. The 1970s... Let me try that again. Star Wars is a franchise... Star Wars? Why to say it like that? It is a mix of... It's a mix. It is a mix of science fiction and fantasy. I can make that more casual. Star Wars... Take on me... Take me on... The first... Damn it. That is not to... Oh my god. I just wanted to give any new Star Wars fans an... No more talk of darkness. Forget these wide-eyed fears. I just wanted to give any new fans... As for the overall quality of these movies, there's... Damn it, okay. Go ahead and watch Star Wars Episode 7, the fourth... I can't name the movie. These movies are meant to be watched as a self... Now that I've covered the mainline Star Wars... Oh my god, I can't do this. One of the major criticisms about this... While Star Wars... Oh my god, shut up. There we go.